Okay guys, let's do some quick imagination. Pretend that it's spring of 1945 and you're inside a German tank. Through the driver's port, you see a weird shape through the smoke. It appears to be approaching towards you, and now you see its machine gun firing directly at you, and you immediately recognize it. It has a stubby 75mm gun and a sloped front. It also has an indistinguishable star on its lower front plate, so you know it's an American tank. This specific tank is known as the M4 Sherman, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's go back in time a bit. It's 1939 and the German invasion of Poland has just taken place. The Germans have been using this new weapon, and it was nothing like anyone had ever seen before. These were the new Panzer III and Panzer IV medium tanks. These had big cannons and more armor. By 1940, Great Britain was in a state of panic. They were low on tanks and they asked their good friend, the Americans, for help. They were already in the process of making emergency equipment as they found out about the Blitzkrieg, and they were happy to help Britain in war efforts. The Americans had some ideas for a new vehicle to counter the Panzers. This tank needed to have a 75mm gun, and had to be much bigger and better armed. There was only one problem. Early development of the M4 had so many issues that it couldn't be put on the production line on time, so another tank, the M3 Medium, was created immediately as a stopgap. In February 1941, there was a directive released by the Chief of Ordnance to immediately proceed with a replacement for the M3. As the M3 was being built in the factories, a replacement was underway. Development of the Sherman started by late August of 1940. This development led to the prototype medium tank T6, marking the beginning of the Sherman's life. The T6 borrowed many powertrain components from the M3. It featured the common engine in the rear, transmission in the front layout, so a large propeller shaft had to extend from the rear to the front, powering the front drive sprockets. It included vertical volute spring suspension, or VVSS, and the same tracks as the M3. And the general, whose name will be put on the new tank, goes to William T. Sherman. Step up to claim your prize. Ha! Suck it, George Washington. The T6's upper hull could either be cast or welded. The T6 had also been made so that different combinations of guns could be added to the turret. 5 were considered. These included as is: one 75mm gun with a 30 caliber coaxial machine gun, 2 37mm guns with a 30 caliber coaxial machine gun, one 105mm howitzer with a 30 caliber coaxial machine gun, 3 50 caliber machine guns for anti-aircraft fire, and one British 57mm high velocity gun with a 30 caliber coaxial machine gun. Because English bias, am I right? The T6 Medium also had a crew of 5 compared to the M3 6-man crew. 5 later became the standard for all US tanks. The layout would be the driver to the front left and the co-driver to the front right. The gunner was to be to the right of the gun, the loader to the left, and the commander behind the gun. A radio was placed behind the commander, hence a little bulge on the rear of Sherman turrets. By May 1941, the Ordnance Committee requested a wooden mock-up and a prototype. So by June 1941, the T6 design was proven to be successful and was used to develop the final design of the Sherman. Lima Locomotive Works was the first factory to deliver the M4, and these first batch of Shermans were sent to the British Army via the Lend-Lease program. They fought in Africa and were proven successful and helped the Allies turn the war in their favor. Shortly after, more factories were put to work on the Sherman, increasing the rate from 1,000 M4s to 2,000 every month. It was the Allies' new battle machine. It was just easy to build, easy to maintain, reliable, roomy, mobile, and well-armored. This high rate of production was also comparable to the Soviets' T-34. Different sub-designations of the Shermans were made, the first of which was the M4A1, which is easily identifiable by the cast upper hull. This variant included a gasoline Continental radial engine, and about 6,281 of these were built with a 75mm gun. This was until 1943, when newer 76mm guns were added, making another set of 3,396. The second was the M4A2, which had a welded hull. It was given a GM diesel engine, and about 8,053 were built with a 75mm gun, and 2,915 were built with a 76mm gun. The third built during the war was the M4A3, which would also see service in the Korean War.
They were the short, hard punch of limited infantry attacks, destroying enemy machine guns and blasting enemy bunkers, which held up the advance of the UN foot soldier.
It was given a 4 GAA engine, and 5,015 of these were built with a 75mm gun, and about 4,512 were built with a 76mm gun. There were also more variants, such as the M4A4, which had around 7,499 built, and the M4A6, which only about 75 were built. The tank weighed about 30 tons and maxed out at a speed of 30 miles per hour on the road. It also had a range of about 120 miles on a full tank of gas, which wasn't completely bad for something that weighed 66,000 pounds. The 75mm gun played its role very great, which was to support infantry. It was never designed to fight tank-on-tank battles, despite how much buzz it was given in the recent years.
What do you want, Tom?
Many myths have taken into account about how flawed the Sherman was, especially in comparison to the newer German tanks that came out in 1942, specifically the Panther and the Tiger tanks. It is true though, by technical standards, that it would take a ton of Shermans to knock out a single Tiger, but it also plays out to how many Tigers that American tanker crews even saw. Germany had been suffering in resources as the war played out, and about only 1,347 Tigers were built during 1942 to 1944. This small number could be expressed even more as many Tigers had issues when they first came out of the factory. The same could be said for the later Tiger II, as an even smaller number, 492, were built between 1943 and 1945. It was just more common to see Panzer IVs than Tigers. As one wise man once said, "A Sherman could give you a really nice edge." A 76mm M1 gun was added anyways in 1943 to boost tanker crew morale. It was more destructive and was even comparable to the KWK-40 L48 gun found on later Panzer IV models. The British had also put in their own QF 17-pounder 76mm gun in their version, also called the Firefly. The US Army also created different models of the Sherman to suit other needs. Some were equipped with a 105mm howitzer, flamethrowers, rocket launchers, and the list goes on. This really shows that the US Army found the Sherman to be the right tank for the war. Don't forget about the infamous Jumbo, by the way. The Sherman would go on to fight in the war, from the European theater to the Pacific theater. It was fought until the end of the war in 1945. This wasn't the end of the Sherman's days, however, as the M4A3 Easy-8 variants were kept in service. These continued to fight in the Korean War, alongside the new M26 Pershings and M46 Pattons. The US Army replaced the M4 in 1957, and many of these Shermans were sent to foreign countries, especially to the Middle East. The Israeli Defense Force modernized them, calling them the M51 Super Sherman. So in the end, the Sherman was known to be a really great tank. It suited its needs, and it helped the Allies fight to the end. On paper, the Sherman looked like a really bad tank, but on the battlefield, it was just one to see. It is best to give the Sherman some credit for its huge role in the war. Thank you for watching my first tank history video. If you liked it, make sure you hit that like button. Also, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future.